This video is part one of a three-part series on tools that I think are good tools for the average user to have in their garage when they're working on garden tractors or working on home projects. These are just a couple tools that I think are extremely important and make your life a lot easier. I'm going to go through these series of videos. I'm going to go through pliers in this video, or other handheld pinching type devices, for lack of a better word. And I am also, in the next video, I will go over wrenches. And in the following video, I will go over sockets and other miscellaneous, sockets, ratchets, and other miscellaneous items. In no order of importance, because I don't think it's, I think it's very hard to try to rank them in importance. But I'm going to go through this line of tools, or line of pliers in front of us, and other hand tools that really the importance of why you might want to have them, and why you might want to get one brand over another, and just some of my personal experiences with these tools. So I'm going to start off, and like I said, no particular order. Oil filter wrench right here. You know, there's a couple different styles of these. You have the old kind of band style oil filter wrench. Oil filter wrenches are reasonably cheap. In this particular case, it's a little bit thicker. Really kind of gives you some purchase on the oil filter instead of the thinner. You know, I think these were like $7. But when you get into those cheaper oil filter wrenches, and particularly the band type wrenches, I've just never been a really big fan of these. I can't even remember where I picked these up. In fact, I may have picked these up at an auction somewhere. I don't necessarily think that you need top of the line on these type of tools, but I do think that something along those lines is incredibly important when you're changing oil, things like that. The next set is a pair of just plain pliers. Now, it seems a little interesting that I would have two sets here. One is a Craftsman, this one is a channel lock, a pair of channel locks. Both I've had this set of Craftsman for probably going on 10 years. This channel lock, I think this pair of channel locks I've had going on 4 or 5 years. Either one will work. I think a good set of pliers. I don't use them a lot. You know, I do use them for like cotter pins and things along those lines, but I don't use them a heap. But they, I think, are something important to have. Either style works just fine. A vice grip. Now, I don't use a lot of vice grips. I tend to think that vice grips, you end up with more torn up stuff when you're using vice grips or to remove nuts and bolts and things along those lines. I tend to use vice grips to stop something from turning, or you know, to stop something from moving, for instance, on a shaft or something like that. I'll use vice grips to do that, but I actually don't use a vice grips very much. Next thing, it's not necessarily a pair of pliers, but it is an important tool, is a crescent wrench. Lots of different styles of crescent wrench. This particular case, they come in 6, 8, 10, 12, 15-inch crescent wrenches. I generally tend to like the 10 and the 8-inch size. I think those are really nice. I just picked out 2 examples of the 10 inches right there. I've got everything up to a 15-inch. You know, they're kind of just universal tools. However, they do not substitute a good wrench or a proper sized wrench, but a lot of people tend to use them like that. The next set is a pair of nippers. These work really good, and these are not necessarily mandatory, but these work really, really well for those cotter pins and stuff that you can't get out. You get in there close to them, and you can break them off. So say if you're removing a deck from a machine, and there's something wrong with the cotter pin, or you're removing an attachment, and the pin is not necessarily cooperating, you can do that. We can remove those pins with something like those nippers. The next is a pair of snap ring pliers. Snap ring pliers come in all shapes and varieties. I think a good pair is pretty much worth its weight in gold. In this particular case, it is a changeable, so it will do internal and external snap rings. So if you need to change out seals that are being held in by a snap ring, you'll want a pair of these, or those pesky front hydraulic ports on a 318, something along those lines, John Deere 318, you'll want a set of those. Oftentimes, a universal set like that actually comes with a kit of other ends, right angle, bent, larger, smaller, things along those lines, and they're just changed out with the Allen bolt right there. You loosen that, and you can change them out. Those are really handy. You can also go for a full set of individual snap ring pliers, and I'll bring those out here in just a little bit. That's generally for the little higher end tools, or you're going to take up more space in your toolbox. But if you use them quite extensively, you might want individual snap ring pliers for different jobs. Next set is a pair of side cutters. This is very similar to the nippers. These side cutters, you're going to get in there, you'll be able to kind of work stuff out. So you'll grip a hold of something, you can pull a cotter pin or cut something, wire, things along those lines. Now I'm going to get into channel locks. Channel locks are very unique. One of the important things that I think everybody misses on channel locks is there's two different styles. This pair of channel locks I bought probably close to 20 years ago. I think when I was 15 or 16, when I was first getting into tools. And if you look at this pair of channel locks, I think I picked up at an auction a couple years ago. If you look at these two and look at the jaws right here, you can see that this pair of jaws is more designed for gripping a nut or bolt, whereas this pair of jaws is just straight. Now, channel locks are channel locks in some respects. For those of you that know some about tools, and maybe you're not watching this video, Nipex are probably even better, or are much better than channel locks. If I had a choice between these two, I would always go with this style of jaw right here. Now, typically, what you will see is this style of jaw is more expensive. And typically, well, until the last couple years, this style of jaw has only come in an individual package, whereas these straight jawed like this, the different sizes, they've come in a 2 or a 3 pack of the different size channel locks. I like both sizes. Really helps for removing pins. You go in there and you can grab a spring and pull it back, and so on and so forth. Really, really handy. You can't say enough about a good pair of channel locks or Nipex pliers, if you know what Nipex are. And like I said, both sizes are really kind of a must-have, or at least to me. Next is a pair of needle nose pliers, and I'm going to get into needle nose pliers here in the next segment of this video. I'll get into a little bit more heavy. But needle nose pliers are great for getting in there and removing spring pins and things along those lines, kind of pulling stuff out. That's what I typically use those for. The last three that I'm going to go over kind of go hand in hand. So what we have is we have a wire stripper, we have a crimper, and we have a set of lineman's pliers. Now, the lineman's pliers you probably don't need. I just happen to really like these are Klein lineman pliers. I've had these for going on 20 years as well. I think I bought them shortly after I bought that set of channel locks right there. Just really nice set of pliers. But this crimper right here, if you're going to do any type of electrical work with crimps and stuff like that, get a really good nice wire stripper and get a good crimper. That way you can get those crimps on those wire ends nice and tight. Now, you can substitute these for this right here, because this does have the crimper on there that you can crimp if you want to. But I've always tend to like the little bit longer handle, and it gives me a little bit better purchase on the crimp. So those are some average garden variety pliers that I think are pretty important to have in your toolbox. And obviously, you don't have to have them all. I think a pair of channel locks, a pair of regular pliers, and maybe a needle nose pliers and a crescent wrench would do you just fine, and maybe a pair of snap ring pliers. But I think that, if you're going to have a good toolbox and you're not going to get frustrated with what you're working on, I think it's important to realize, having a good set of pliers is something that's important. Now, the next segment of the video, I'm going to get into a little bit of quality and how the quality might vary from one type of pliers to the next, or even age. So I'm going to get set up for that, and the next segment of the video will cover that. All right, so a little bit about more in-depth study of tools and how you might want to improve the quality of the tool you have or may not. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start over here on the right-hand side, and I'm going to kind of go through some of these long-handled pliers. So I didn't show these in the last segment of the video because these all four of those sets of pliers right there are Mac pliers, so they are relatively expensive. If you wanted to buy the set, I think on eBay it's probably going to run you $100+ for the complete set, which there's about 8 pairs in there, or more, $100 or more. And you know, it's a lot of money for something you might not necessarily use all that often. Now, for me, because of the type of work that I do in the garage, I've found that it actually is worth my effort and time to go out and buy pliers like this, because it's very helpful if I can reach in there a little bit longer and grab stuff. And really, you know, quality-wise, I don't necessarily think that these are any different quality than most other, like say, a channel lock brand or something like that. But, you know, there's little itty bitty refinements. The plastic is a little different. You've got these spring clips right there to spring it out. You know, you've got the warranties on them that you might not necessarily have on other type of tools. And generally, I've found that they do last a little longer. Now, that's not a very important concern for most folks. The tools aren't necessarily going to wear out. But I do wear out tools just from the extent of what I do. And I see a lot of people argue online that, you know, Snap-on and Mac and Cornwell and Blue Point aren't worth money. And, you know, Harbor Freight's got tools for cheap, and now they have the Icon line. And I don't necessarily want this video to be about that type of deal, because I think every tool at every price point has its own place in the world of turning wrenches, because it all fits a price point. So, for instance, going to the snap rings, I'm kind of moving away from the pliers, going to these snap ring pliers right here. Now, this is a pair of Snap-on snap ring pliers, so, you know, 20, 30 bucks for that pair right there. Meanwhile, these Tecton, which they are made in China from what I remember, you know, these are that individual style that I was talking about versus the previous style that, you know, you can change the tip out on. These are the individual, so these are only internal snap rings. Same with these are straight, only internal snap rings. You're never going to be able to spread an external snap ring apart. So, you know, that's something to think about. But these are like $6.99 a piece compared to these that are much, much more expensive, 2, 3, 4 times the amount of money. So, you know, when you start thinking about things like that, you know, maybe stepping back to a cheaper brand is perfectly fine. You know, I really like to use Snap-on ratchets, but honestly, sockets doesn't really matter to me. I think a Craftsman impact socket is the same as a Snap-on impact socket, and I think, I mean, honestly, until the last couple years, I would have said that most ratchets were all the same, but in my opinion, and we'll get into this ratchet video, Craftsman has definitely fallen a long way in the last few years, and I'll go into some of those examples. But going on to other pliers, you know, in some cases, you know, where folks say, oh, you know, you need the best tools. So this is a pair of Snap-on pliers, and sorry they're so dirty. This is the only pair that I could quickly put my hands on. But these are a pair of Snap-ons. They work great, but functionally, while they are a little bit different in shape, they're about the same as this. So, you know, I don't necessarily think that you don't need top-end tools, but at the same time, don't go out and buy the cheapest stuff that you can find if you're going to expect to use it a lot. Now, it's perfectly fine going out there and buying cheaper tools and finding the tools that are you know, budget tools. If you're only going to use them once a month to do a little tinkering here, a little tinkering there, or you only want to fix up one machine, cheap tools are perfectly fine. Absolutely no problem with that. You know, go buy them, you spend as little as possible, you get your work out of them, and you move on. So hopefully that helps a little bit, you know, answer some questions about what kind of tools you might need. Hopefully provided a little bit of background on what tool or what pair of pliers that I like, or hand tools that I like. around the shop and also a little bit about quality. And I mean, we could talk about months for quality, and I don't necessarily think that I am qualified to talk too much about tool quality, because all of my really nice tools are secondhand, because I can't justify the price of buying new professional tools, for lack of a better term. So I'm going to leave this video here, and in the next video, we're going to talk about wrenches. Thanks for watching.